The storm lashed against the steel-enforced dome of the Krelvok colony. Rain hissed like acid on the outer shielding, while black, jagged lightning clawed at the sky, silhouetting the massive jagged cliffs that surrounded the settlement. To the Krelvok, this was home, an unforgiving, violent world that had shaped their species over eons into hardened survivors. Born of firestorms and toxic atmospheres, the Krelvok thrived where others could not. Their exoskeletons, as tough as cerasteel, shielded them from the toxic rains. Their lungs, layered with biofilters, turned poisonous air into breathable oxygen. Across the galaxy, they were feared and respected as Deathworlders, beings shaped by the cruelest environments in existence. For centuries they had considered themselves unique in their resilience. Their first forays into the galactic community confirmed it. No other species came close to enduring the extremes they did. Other sapients from garden worlds relied on technology and fragile atmospheric suits to visit Krelvok Prime. Their bodies were weak, their endurance laughable. The Krelvok pitied them. Yet, despite their disdain, the Krelvok were cautious. After all, they had learned the harsh lesson of overconfidence from their own world. High Commander Zekran stood on the observation platform overlooking the storm-racked plains, his 4 arms folded across his chest. The colony's sensors were tracking something unusual, a massive object descending through the atmosphere, its trajectory locked onto Krelvok Prime. The energy readings were staggering, dwarfing even the colony's most powerful reactors. "Is it a weapon?" one of the analysts asked, their voice trembling. Zekran clicked his mandibles in irritation. "No weapon of this scale has ever been reported in the galactic archives. But that doesn't mean it isn't. Increase shield power and prepare orbital defenses." The room fell silent as the object pierced through the upper atmosphere. The holographic display showed it clearly now, a dark, angular craft with an almost predatory shape. Its hull glowed red-hot as it cut through the atmosphere, but it didn't disintegrate. Whatever material it was made of, it was more resilient than anything the Krelvok had ever encountered. "Who could survive a landing in that?" one of the engineers muttered, his antennae twitching nervously. Zekran didn't answer. His compound eyes remained fixed on the display. The craft slowed its descent with eerie precision, as if it were taunting them. It came to rest on the outskirts of the colony, its landing so smooth it barely disturbed the jagged rock below. "All units to your stations," Zekran barked. "Defensive drones online. Activate suppression turrets." The colony's defensive systems roared to life, plasma cannons swiveling to lock onto the alien ship. Drones armed with railguns hovered in tight formations around the settlement. The Krelvok had faced off against the most dangerous predators their world had to offer. This was no different. But what emerged from the ship was. The hatch hissed open and a ramp extended to the ground. A figure appeared, silhouetted against the light spilling from the interior. At first, Zekran thought it was a robot, a humanoid shape encased in gleaming metal. But as it stepped forward, the sensors began picking up organic signatures beneath the armor. "Impossible," Zekran muttered under his breath. No organic could survive this environment. The figure kept walking, undeterred by the storm. Its movements were fluid, purposeful. Behind it, more figures emerged, each clad in the same sleek armor, their faces obscured by reflective visors. There were 5 of them in total, and they moved as one like a pack of apex predators. "This is High Commander Zekran of the Krelvok," he announced, his voice echoing through the colony's external speakers. "You are trespassing on sovereign territory. State your purpose or be destroyed." For a moment there was silence. Then the lead figure spoke, its voice projected through some kind of translator. "We mean no harm," it said. The tone was calm, almost casual, but there was an underlying edge to it, like the growl of a predator waiting to strike. "We come in peace. But we will defend ourselves if necessary." Zekran's mandibles twitched. It was the standard diplomatic line used by countless species, but there was something unsettling about the way the figure said it, like it was a warning, not a plea. The storm intensified, lightning flashing so bright it lit up the entire sky. In that brief moment of illumination, Zekran saw the insignia on the figure's armor, a blue and white circle split by red stripes. It was nothing the Krelvok recognized. "Identify yourselves," Zekran demanded. The lead figure tilted its head slightly. "We are humans," it said simply. The word meant nothing to Zekran. But it would soon. The humans were escorted into the colony under heavy guard. The Krelvok didn't trust them, not yet. But they were curious. What kind of species could walk so casually through an environment that would kill most galactic sapients in minutes? The humans removed their helmets once inside, revealing soft, fleshy faces. Their skin tones varied, some pale, others darker, but they all shared the same unsettling confidence. Their leader, a tall female with sharp eyes, introduced herself as Captain Elena Carter. "We're explorers," she explained, her voice calm and measured. "We've been charting this region of the galaxy and noticed your colony. We thought it would be polite to introduce ourselves." "Polite?" Zekran echoed, his voice dripping with skepticism. "You arrived in a craft bristling with unknown technology and landed uninvited on our world. Politeness does not seem to be your priority." Captain Carter smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We weren't sure how you'd react to a simple greeting. It's always better to be prepared." Zekran studied her, his compound eyes scanning every detail of her posture, her tone, her words. She was lying, at least partially. But there was also something else, something that made his kite itch. The humans weren't afraid of them. For the Krelvok, fear was an instinctive response to danger, an evolutionary advantage honed by their harsh environment. Even the most stoic diplomats from other species couldn't completely hide their unease in the presence of Krelvok warriors. But these humans? Their body language was relaxed, almost casual, as if they were meeting equals. Or prey. Zekran didn't like it. "You claim to be explorers," he said. "Yet your craft is outfitted with weapons far beyond anything we've encountered. What kind of explorers come prepared for war?" Carter's smile widened. "The kind that grew up on a death world," she said. The room fell silent. The Krelvok guards exchanged uneasy glances. "You're lying," Zekran said finally. "No other species has survived a death world. We are the only ones." "Are you?" Carter asked, raising an eyebrow. She leaned forward slightly, her tone turning almost conspiratorial. "You think this storm is bad? On our world, hurricanes like this happen all the time, and we don't have exoskeletons to protect us. The predators on your planet are impressive, sure, but ours don't stop hunting just because the sun goes down. And as for your poisonous atmosphere," she chuckled, a low, dangerous sound. "We've been to places worse than this and called it home." Zekran's mandibles clicked in irritation. He wanted to dismiss her claims as bravado, but something in her voice, the absolute certainty, gave him pause. "Why are you really here?" he demanded. Carter's expression softened, but her eyes remained sharp. "Because we're like you," she said. "Survivors. And survivors do better together." For the first time in his life, Zekran wasn't sure if he was the predator or the prey. The storm raged on outside, the colony's shields glowing faintly as they strained against the barrage of acid rain and high-velocity winds. Inside, the air between the Krelvok and the humans was just as charged. High Commander Zekran sat at the head of the war table, his clawed hands steepled as he studied Captain Carter and her team. Despite his best efforts to intimidate them, the humans remained unervingly calm. "You claim to be like us," Zekran began, his deep, chitinous voice echoing through the chamber. "But words are cheap. If you are truly Deathworlders, prove it." Carter leaned back in her chair, her lips twitching into a faint smile. "You want proof? All right. What kind of test are we talking about?" Zekran's mandibles clicked in thought. "Your ship may have impressive technology, but I am not interested in machines. I want to see what you are capable of. We will drop you into the wastelands beyond the colony, where no sapient creature has ever returned alive. Survive for 3 days and I will consider your claims." The room fell silent. Even the Krelvok guards exchanged uneasy glances. The wastelands were infamous, a barren expanse of jagged cliffs, corrosive rivers, and apex predators that made even the Krelvok wary. To Zekran's surprise, Carter didn't flinch. She exchanged a quick glance with her team, then turned back to him. 3 days? Is that all?" The Krelvok leader stiffened. Was this mockery? Arrogance? "Do not underestimate the wastelands," he growled. "Even we rarely venture there. You may request to withdraw if your species lacks the fortitude." Carter laughed softly, the sound startling in its confidence. "Commander, if we didn't think we could handle it, we wouldn't have come to introduce ourselves in the first place. Give us the coordinates. We'll be ready." Zekran's mandibles twitched. He didn't like her tone, but part of him was curious. The human's composure was either the result of foolish bravado or the kind of confidence that only came from experience. He intended to find out which. The next morning, the humans stood at the edge of the colony, outfitted in lightweight armor that seemed almost laughable to the Krelvok observers. They carried no heavy weapons, only compact rifles and a few other tools the Krelvok didn't recognize. "This equipment is insufficient," Zekran stated as he approached them. "You will not last the night without proper survival gear." Carter turned to him, her expression calm but firm. "We'll manage," she said simply. Zekran's mandibles twitched again, an involuntary response to his growing irritation. "Your arrogance will be your undoing. We've been told that before," one of the other humans, a dark-haired male named Ramirez, said with a smirk. Without further ceremony, the humans were loaded into a transport craft and flown deep into the wastelands. The landscape below was a jagged hellscape of razor-sharp rock formations, sulfuric geysers, and rivers of glowing, toxic sludge. Even from the safety of the transport, the Krelvok pilot flinched as lightning forked dangerously close to the craft. "This is where they wanted to go," the pilot muttered. "Drop them," Zekran ordered through the comms. The transport hovered briefly over a flat outcropping before the humans disembarked. Carter turned and gave a small wave to the pilot before the ramp closed and the craft ascended, leaving them behind. Zekran watched the live feed from the safety of the colony. Drones equipped with long-range cameras had been deployed to monitor the humans' progress. He wanted no excuses when they inevitably failed. For the first several hours, the humans moved with methodical precision, making their way across the treacherous terrain. Zekran watched with growing interest as they navigated hazards that would have claimed the lives of lesser beings. When a sudden geyser erupted, spewing a cloud of toxic gas, the humans reacted instantly. Carter barked a command, and the team donned masks that seemed to neutralize the airborne toxins. Moments later they were on the move again, unshaken. "They've studied the terrain," Zekran murmured. It was the only explanation. Somehow they had anticipated the dangers. But preparation could only go so far. The wastelands were alive, and the predators that lurked within were not so easily outmaneuvered. Night fell quickly, plunging the landscape into darkness. The temperature plummeted, and the air grew thick with the howls of unseen creatures. Zekran leaned forward in his seat as the first real test emerged from the shadows. The drone feed showed a massive predator, a six-limbed beast with armored scales and glowing yellow eyes, stalking the humans from a ridge above. It moved with terrifying speed and silence, closing the distance before its prey even noticed. Zekran's mandibles clicked in anticipation. This would be the end. But the humans reacted faster than he expected. Ramirez was the first to spot the creature, his rifle snapping up as he shouted a warning. The predator lunged, its jaws wide enough to snap a Krelvok in half, but Carter stepped forward with a calmness that bordered on insanity. In a single, fluid motion, she raised her weapon and fired a short burst into the creature's face. The round struck its armored hide, not killing it but staggering it enough for the team to regroup. Another human, a towering figure named Okoye, pulled a compact grenade from his belt and hurled it at the beast. The explosion lit up the night, sending shards of rock and gore flying. When the smoke cleared, the predator lay motionless, its massive form slumped across the jagged terrain. Zekran stared at the screen, stunned. The humans didn't celebrate or linger. They simply moved on, their formation tight and their pace unbroken. "They killed it," one of the Krelvok guards murmured. Zekran said nothing. He didn't want to admit it, but he was impressed. By the second day the humans had adapted fully to the wastelands. They scavenged what little edible vegetation they could find, purified water from toxic streams using compact devices, and set up camp in defensible locations. The wastelands were testing them, throwing everything it had to offer: the storms, the predators, the poison. But the humans met every challenge head-on, not with brute force but with calculated strategy. "They're not just surviving," Zekran realized, his mandibles clicking softly. "They're thriving." The revelation left him uneasy. If this was what humans could do in the wastelands, what were they capable of in an environment more forgiving? As the second night fell, Zekran watched as Carter's team prepared for the inevitable onslaught of nocturnal predators. But this time it wasn't just the wastelands testing them. Unbeknownst to the humans, Zekran had ordered a squad of Krelvok hunters to confront them. It wasn't just a test anymore, it was a measure of superiority. If humans wanted to claim the title of Deathworlders, they would have to prove they could stand against the galaxy's most formidable warriors. As the hunters closed in on the humans' position, Zekran leaned forward, his compound eyes glinting with anticipation. One way or another, the truth would be revealed. The Krelvok hunters moved like shadows across the wasteland, their four-legged forms blending seamlessly with the jagged terrain. Their exoskeletons absorbed the faint moonlight, rendering them nearly invisible to both drones and their prey. Each hunter was armed with bladed gauntlets and a plasma rifle, weapons honed through centuries of conflict against the deadliest creatures in the galaxy. High Commander Zekran watched the drone feed closely from the colony, his claws tapping the armrest of his chair. This was no ordinary hunting squad. These were the elite veterans of the Krelvok's harshest trials. If the humans survived this encounter, it would mean they were more than just lucky, it would mean they were equals. But Zekran doubted they would survive. On the ground, the humans were unaware of the incoming threat. Their camp was situated at the base of a jagged cliff, surrounded on three sides by natural barriers. A small fire crackled at the center of their makeshift perimeter, its light barely penetrating the oppressive darkness. Carter crouched by the fire, her sharp eyes scanning the wasteland beyond. The others were busy checking their weapons and equipment, their movements quiet and efficient. "Something feels off," Ramirez muttered, breaking the silence. He stood a few meters away, his rifle slung across his chest as he watched the ridgeline. "You're not wrong," Carter replied. She adjusted a scanner on her wrist, but the device showed nothing beyond the usual background radiation and ambient heat signatures. Still, her instincts, sharpened by years of survival on Earth and countless other hostile environments, told her they were being watched. Okoye, the largest of the group, finished assembling a compact drone and sent it hovering into the air. It zipped away silently, its sensors scanning the surrounding area. "If something's out there, we'll know soon enough," he said, his deep voice steady. But the hunters were patient. They waited until the drone moved out of range, then closed the distance with precision. Their exoskeletons made no noise as they crawled across the rocky terrain, their rifles trained on the humans below. The first attack came without warning. A plasma bolt streaked through the air, striking the fire pit and sending a shower of embers into the night. The humans reacted instantly, diving for cover as more bolts rained down. "Contact! Multiple targets!" Ramirez shouted, rolling behind a jagged boulder and returning fire. Carter's voice cut through the chaos. "Defensive positions. Okoye, take the high ground. Ramirez, cover the left flank." The humans moved like a well-oiled machine, their training evident in every motion. Okoye sprinted toward a rocky outcropping, his massive frame surprisingly agile, while Ramirez laid down suppressing fire to keep the attackers pinned. But the Krelvok hunters weren't ordinary opponents. They flanked the humans with surgical precision, their plasma rifles sending bursts of energy that forced the team to stay on the defensive. Carter, crouched behind cover, activated a thermal scope on her rifle. Through the haze of the storm and the darkness, she caught a glimpse of a Krelvok hunter moving along the ridge. It was fast, faster than anything she'd encountered before, but she didn't hesitate. Her shot rang out, the rifle's high-caliber round punching through the hunter's shoulder. The alien let out a guttural screech and fell back, but two more took its place, their movements even more aggressive. "Okoye status?" Carter barked. "Setting up a countermeasure," Okoye replied. He planted a small device on the ground, its surface pulsing with blue light. Moments later, an energy shield sprang to life, creating a temporary barrier between the humans and their attackers. Ramirez laughed as the shield absorbed several plasma bolts. "Nice work, big guy." But the Krelvok weren't deterred. One of the hunters leapt from the ridge, landing inside the shield with a bone-jarring impact. Its bladed gauntlets gleamed in the firelight as it charged toward Carter. She sidestepped the first strike, her movements fluid and precise. The second strike came faster, but she ducked under it, raising her pistol and firing 3 shots into the hunter's torso. The alien staggered, black ichor dripping from its wounds, but it didn't fall. Before it could recover, Okoye tackled it from the side, slamming it into a boulder with enough force to crack the stone. The hunter let out a guttural roar, but Okoye silenced it with a knife plunged into the soft joint of its neck. "That's one down," he muttered, pulling the blade free. "Don't get cocky," Carter warned, her eyes scanning the darkness. "There are more out there." As if on cue, another plasma bolt streaked past her head, grazing the cliff wall behind her. The Krelvok were relentless, their attacks coordinated and unyielding. But the humans were adapting. In the colony, Zekran watched the battle unfold with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. The humans weren't just surviving, they were countering the hunters' every move with ingenuity and ferocity. When the hunters tried to flank them again, Carter's team anticipated it, setting up tripwire explosives that sent 2 of the Krelvok sprawling. When the remaining hunters switched to melee tactics, the humans met them head-on, their knives and compact weapons finding the weak points in their exoskeletons. Zekran leaned forward, his claws digging into the armrest. The hunters were losing. "How is this possible?" one of his advisors murmured, their antennae twitching nervously. Zekran didn't answer. His compound eyes remained fixed on the screen as the last hunter fell, its bladed gauntlets clattering to the ground. The humans were bloodied but alive, their armor scorched and their faces smeared with dirt and sweat. Carter stood at the center of the battlefield, her rifle slung over her shoulder as she surveyed the aftermath. They knew, Zekran muttered under his breath. They knew we would test them. Back on the ground, Carter crouched beside one of the fallen hunters, inspecting its armor and weapons. Advanced tech, but not invincible, she noted, her voice calm despite the battle they'd just endured. Okoye wiped blood from his knife and glanced at her. You think this was their way of saying hello? Carter smirked. If it was, I think we made a good impression. Ramirez chuckled, though his tone was more serious. If this is what they call a test, what's the next level? Carter didn't answer immediately. She stared out at the wasteland, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon. They wanted to see if we could survive their worst, she said finally. Now they know we can. She stood and turned to the others. We keep moving. If they're watching, and I know they are, we're not giving them the satisfaction of seeing us stop. As the team packed up and resumed their trek, the storm began to ease, the howling winds giving way to an eerie silence. The humans had proven themselves against both the wastelands and the Krelvok hunters, but Carter knew this was only the beginning. The real test had yet to come. The wastelands stretched endlessly ahead, their jagged peaks and glowing rivers of toxic sludge a cruel reminder that survival here was a battle against nature itself. But for Captain Carter and her team, the challenges had only fueled their determination. They had trekked through the night after defeating the Krelvok hunters, aware that more eyes were watching. Every step felt heavy with the weight of unseen observers, but they pressed on, driven by the unspoken understanding that this trial wasn't just about proving their strength, it was about earning respect in a galaxy that seemed to thrive on testing them. By the dawn of the third day their supplies were dwindling. The air was thick with the acrid tang of sulfur, and the ground beneath their boots had grown unstable, threatening to collapse into bubbling pits of acid with every step. 3 days, Ramirez muttered as he adjusted the strap of his rifle. Feels like 3 years? We're almost there, Carter replied, her voice firm but tinged with weariness. She checked her wrist scanner again, noting the faint blip of a drone far overhead. They're still watching. They want to see if we'll break. We won't, Okoye said simply. The terrain shifted abruptly as they descended into a vast basin, the ground littered with the skeletal remains of creatures far larger than anything they had encountered. The air grew still, the silence oppressive. Carter raised a hand, signaling the team to stop. Something's not right, she said, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the horizon. Before anyone could respond, the ground trembled. A deep, guttural roar echoed through the basin, and from the shadows emerged the largest predator they had seen yet, a towering monstrosity with armored plating, serrated claws, and a maw large enough to swallow a human whole. Of course there's a final boss, Ramirez muttered, raising his rifle. The creature charged, its massive form tearing through the skeletal remains as if they were paper. Carter shouted orders and the team scattered, firing precise shots at the beast's vulnerable joints. The battle was brutal. The creature's armored hide deflected most of their bullets, and its sheer size made it nearly impossible to evade entirely. Ramirez was knocked off his feet by a swipe of its tail, narrowly avoiding being crushed as Okoye distracted it with a hail of gunfire. Carter darted between cover, analyzing the creature's movements. She noticed a faint glow beneath its armored chest, a weak point where its pulsating organs were exposed. Aim for the underside, she shouted. Okoye nodded, tossing another grenade to force the creature to rear back. Ramirez, injured but still in the fight, took position on higher ground and fired a well-placed shot at the glowing weak point. The creature roared in pain, thrashing wildly as the humans pressed their attack. Finally, Carter delivered the killing blow. She sprinted beneath the creature as it stumbled, jamming a compact explosive device into the exposed cavity. "Get clear," she yelled, diving for cover as the device detonated. The explosion was deafening. The creature let out a final agonized roar before collapsing in a heap, its massive body shaking the ground as it fell. Silence returned to the basin, broken only by the team's ragged breathing. That, Ramirez said, clutching his side, was definitely not in the brochure. Carter allowed herself a small smile as she helped him to his feet. "We're alive. That's all that matters." The transport craft arrived an hour later, its hull scorched from the storm but otherwise intact. The team climbed aboard without a word, their exhaustion palpable. As the craft ascended, Carter glanced back at the wastelands, the horizon still shrouded in ash and storm clouds. They had survived. But the question remained, what had they proven? Back in the colony, High Commander Zekran stood in the observation chamber, his mandibles clicking softly as he reviewed the drone footage. The humans had not only survived the wastelands but had overcome every obstacle with a resilience and ingenuity that rivaled even the Krelvok. "They are Deathworlders," he said finally, his voice heavy with both respect and unease. One of his advisors stepped forward. "Do we extend the hand of alliance, Commander?" Zekran turned away from the screen, his compound eyes narrowing as he considered the implications. The humans were more than worthy, but their existence posed a challenge to the Krelvok's long-held belief in their supremacy. "Summon them," he ordered. "It is time we speak as equals." When Carter and her team stepped into the war chamber once more, the atmosphere was different. The Krelvok warriors who had once eyed them with suspicion now stood at attention, their postures respectful. Zekran rose from his seat, his towering form casting a long shadow across the room. "Captain Carter," he said, his voice carrying an unfamiliar tone of reverence. "You and your team have proven your strength, your intelligence, and your worth. You are not merely visitors to this galaxy, you are its contenders." Carter inclined her head. "And you've shown us what it means to be Krelvok. We didn't come here to conquer or compete. We came to stand beside you." Zekran regarded her for a long moment before extending one of his clawed hands. "Then let us begin as allies, not adversaries." Carter stepped forward, clasping his hand without hesitation. The Krelvok weren't the only Deathworlders anymore. And for the first time in their long history they weren't alone. As the humans left the war chamber, side by side with their new allies, Carter couldn't help but glance back at the storm still raging outside the colony. It was a fitting metaphor, she thought. The galaxy was a tempest, dangerous and unpredictable. But together they could weather it.